Well, this is Abebe Nagash. I am reading today, May 24, 2025. Actually, 14 minutes. It's May 25, 25. Anyways, the topic is the Ethiopian they are erasing. And this is a testimony of state-sponsored brutality, ethnic supremacy, and global silence. In summary, the document I am about to read, under Ethiopian Hearts for Peace, EHP, is a cry from the soul of a nation. It represents a piercing, first-hand account of the unfolding humanitarian, political, and spiritual crisis in Ethiopia under the current regime. The testimony is divided into 3 interconnected sections, each exposing a layer of a carefully orchestrated plan to dismantle Ethiopia's unity and identity. So let's begin. The ants of oppression. Ethiopia's orchestrated dehumanization and manufactured poverty. Leading Ethiopia, the Prime Minister once said, is like carrying millions of ants. This was no metaphor for determination or strength. It was a chilling admission of contempt. This language is not only careless, it is dangerous. To liken people, millions of citizens, to ants is to strip them of their humanity. This is a kind of rhetoric that has preceded genocide in our world. It is this exact kind of dehumanization that led to the slaughter of Tutsis in Rwanda, where victims were called cockroaches. What is unfolding in Ethiopia today is not simply political turmoil. Prosperity gospel followers, pastors are using the same rhetoric again and again. One even heard on a stage of Protestants or prosperity gospel, poor people are like black ants. Once they take a hold of you, they will not let it go. In all, it is the calculated construction of state-sponsored cruelty, weaponized poverty, and engineered social collapse. In modern Ethiopia, suffering is not a side effect, it is a strategy. Poverty is not a policy failure, it's a tool of control. The government, wrapped in the cloak of the prosperity party and using the rhetoric of reform, is orchestrating a devastating degradation of Ethiopia's soul. Millions of Ethiopians cannot afford a single meal a day. Food, shelter, medicine, basic human needs are out of reach. And this is not by accident, it is by design. See, the prosperity gospel, imported and distorted into a justification for state neglect, tells Ethiopians that suffering is holy, that poverty is spiritual. But there is nothing spiritual about deliberate starvation. There's nothing holy about watching people die from treatable illness while hospitals collapse. Teachers walk out, doctors strike, public servants abandon their posts because wages can no longer buy bread. What Ethiopians are experiencing is the spiritualization of suffering, the sanctification of despair, enforced from the top down. In Addis Ababa and other cities, thousands sleep in the streets if they can manage, if they can hide from militias and police patrolling the area, while real estate projects rise, funded by foreign dollars, by the way, and built for foreign guests. Lands are sold to the Gulf states. Young women are trafficked under the guise of domestic labor. Ethiopian soil is now a marketplace for the highest bidder. Agriculture sold, minerals auctioned, dignity traded for silence. And all the while, the voice of protest is criminalized. When Ethiopians wore black to mourn the dead, massacred by state-tolerated mobs and militias in Oromia, they were prosecuted. Wearing black became a crime. This is not governance. This is psychological warfare. A government that forbids mourning forbids humanity itself. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church, one of the oldest Christian institutions in the world, has become a battlefield. Holy sites have been looted, ancient sculptures burned, priests attacked, monasteries razed, all under the eye or direction of the government. And the man who led these destructions, Abunosaurios, is rewarded. Instead of facing justice, he is promoted within the Holy Synod, a move that dismantles the sacred altar of Ethiopia's faith from within. This is not coincidence, brothers and sisters. It is cultural assassination. A country that loses its faith, its memory, its mourning, and its voices becomes easy to manipulate. A country stripped of pride can be reshaped in any tyrant's image. And so, the language of the ants returns. To call people ants is to call them replaceable. To step on them without consequences. To expect them to crawl, not to rise. But Ethiopians are not ants. They are the descendants of empires, of saints, of warriors and thinkers. The state, however, sees them not as heirs to greatness, but as obstacles to power. The IMF and World Bank are complicit. Austerity measures are now fully implemented. Budgets are slashed under the guise of reform. But the only thing being reformed is life itself, turned into suffering. These international institutions know the consequences. They have seen it before. Structural adjustments has killed it before. And yet they sign the papers again. The crisis is holistic. It is spiritual, economic, psychological, and physical. It is orchestrated and the people orchestrating it do so with full awareness of history. This is not a country that has forgotten itself. It is a country being forced to forget. They want Ethiopia hollowed out, empty of resistance, empty of memory, empty of unity. The displacement of people is not just about war. It is about replacing communities with new loyalties, erasing traditions, and redrawing the emotional map of the country. Apologies. And amidst all this international silence, the UN sees, the African UN watches, Western embassies know. They have the reports. They read the same headlines. And yet, no outrage, no sanctions, no tribunals, no tears. How long until they say, we didn't know? How long until another Rwanda is declared genocide? Only after it has claimed 1 million souls? I believe it already did. We have the chance to name it this now, to resist this now. The people are not ants. They are not disposable. Their suffering is not a statistic. It is a cry of a nation being broken by design. This must be preserved, not only as a record of pain, but as a call to consciousness. And so we say loudly and clearly, we are not ants. We are not blind. We are not voiceless. We are watching. We are recording. And we will not be erased. The Prime Minister of Ethiopia likened leading Ethiopia to carrying millions of ants, a chilling phrase echoing the Rwandan pre-genocide labeling of victims as cockroaches. This section documents the brutal tactics used to dehumanize and silence populations, starvation as policy, forced displacement, destruction of churches, and the weaponization of economic hardship. Ethiopians are not just suffering, they are being systematically reduced to expendable masses by their own government. Let's have a look at on the section 2, the Oromuma project and the strategy of ethnic hegemony. In the heart of East Africa, Ethiopia, a land of ancient civilization, complex identities and layered histories, is confronting a perilous political experiment disguised under nationalistic rhetoric. This experiment, which has come to be known as the Oromuma project, is not merely a political movement. It is a multifaceted agenda that strategically blends expansionist ideology, ethnic absolutism, and the re-engineering of Ethiopia's rhetoric narrative, borders, and institutions. The term Oromuma, rooted in Oromo identity but radicalized through political manipulation, has been championed by the ruling Prosperity Party as a cultural and ideological renaissance. However, what unfolds beneath the surface is far more disturbing. It is an attempt to centralize power within an ethnic framework while projecting a Kushite empire ideology that seeks to reorder the Horn of Africa. Not enough inclusion or federal harmony, but through calculated exclusion, forced assimilation, and ethnic hierarchy. In this grand narrative, this grand narrative envisions Oromo supremacy not only within Ethiopia but stretching towards the Red Sea by way of Eritrea, Djibouti, Somalia, and even portions of Kenya. What is framed as an effort to secure sea access, ostensibly for the prosperity of all Ethiopians, is in reality a subversive strategy to rally national support while executing a narrower ethnic conquest under the guise of pan-Ethiopian needs. At the core of this strategy lies the calculated instrumentalization of historic grievances and the weaponization of poverty, displacement, and identity. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, who publicly compared leading Ethiopia to carrying millions of ants, has reduced the complex human fabric of the nation into a metaphor of dehumanization. This is not an innocent rhetorical slip. It is a foundational signal. It aligns with the dangerous language of other genocidal histories, like the Cockroaches of Rwanda. It communicates a deeply embedded disdain for collective human struggle, implicitly justifying authoritarian measures to control, rearrange, or eliminate. Brothers and sisters, the Oromuma project takes this metaphor to its most dangerous end by justifying policies that marginalize the Amhara, Afar, and other groups seen as obstacles to its realization. In places like Wollo, for instance, where Oromo Muslims and Amhara Christians have coexisted for generations, the social fabric is being deliberately ripped apart. Systematic demographic engineering is taking place. Areas are redrawn, populations are displaced, and historical regions are rebranded as Oromo territories to fabricate a majority and enforce a political claim. More troubling is the case of the Afar people. Pastoralists, deeply Ethiopianist in their national loyalty, and a bulwark against Red Sea fragmentation. Their land is being quietly and violently absorbed. The government, while outwardly declaring a peaceful sea access agenda, is covertly enabling inclusion into Afar territory, knowing full well the historic animosity between Afar and Oromo pastoralists. The aim is not negotiation, but elimination. The Afar identity, loyalty, and resistance stand as an impediment to the Oromuma dream, and thus they are being erased through attrition and forced isolation. Meanwhile, In the southern front, similar tactics are deployed. South Sudanese forces are reportedly entering Ethiopian territory with impunity, replacing Ethiopian flags, renaming villages, and terrorizing border populations. Government is quiet. Rather than confronting this external breach, the government turns a blind eye, seemingly. The suffering of the indigenous people becomes leverage for what is yet to come. When resentment reaches a peak, the administration presents itself as a savior, offering military intervention not as a protective mandate, but as a recruitment tactic to swallow the newly formed South Sudan. Claim will be it is Ethiopian territory by history from Abyssinia. The displaced and traumatized are asked to fight for a regime that allowed their victimization in exchange for a promise to reclaim their dignity. Let's go to another region, Somali regions. A similar strategy is playing out there too. You see, the Somalis and the Afaris also don't like each other that much. Here, the promise is grand. Wait patiently, and a greater Somalia will emerge under Oromo leadership. A greater Somalia includes the current fragmented state of Somalia. While historically Somali Ethiopians have been vocal, really, and resistant to ethnic hegemony, today they are unusually silent. Why? Because the government has struck a covert pact. In exchange for silence and obedience, Somali elites are assured a stake in future territorial expansions into Somalia, Mogadishu proper. It is a devil's bargain, facilitated by Article 39 of the Ethiopian Constitution, which enables ethnic regions to secede, but under Oromuma. The right to secession becomes a lever not for autonomy, but for a conquest. The same ideological fervor extends to Kenya. For those of you who don't know, the northern Kenyans speak the same language as the Oromos in the South Ethiopia. And so border violence between Kenyan communities and radicalized Oromo groups is escalating. People are dying. People are killed. Politicians in Kenya have begun warning their constituents of an impending regional conflict. Ethiopian-backed fighters, under the Oromuma pretext, are aiming to liberate Oromo people in northern Kenya. This is not about unity, it is about ethno-nationalist expansionism. The regional fallout of such moves could be catastrophic, dragging multiple East African states into a wider ethnic war. Let's make it clear. The colonialists, when they drew these borders, they divided communities into different states. While we reject that colonial borders in Africa are troubling. The way to unite the border communities is not in violence. It gotta be with talks and mutual understanding. See, internally, Oromuma continues its dual policy of dehumanization and pacification. The government continues to deny basic necessities, food, medicine, housing, to large swaths of the population, particularly in non-Oromo regions. The justification for this economic cruelty is layered in neoliberal rhetoric, citing IMF-imposed austerity or World Bank development schemes. In reality, it is a form of engineered suffering. Make people desperate enough and they will rally behind whoever offers relief. Under this model, poverty is not a policy failure, it is a political instrument. The same model applies to religion. Orthodox Christianity, one of Ethiopia's oldest pillars, is under siege. Sacred sites are desecrated, churches burned, and priests attacked. Abunasaurios, an extremist of Oromo origin, has spearheaded this assault, traveling across rural Ethiopia, dismantling altars, and inciting rebellion. His followers have left behind trails of blood and desecration, and yet, instead of condemnation and facing justice, he was promoted to the highest religious council under direct government pressure. The symbolism is clear. Even the Ethiopian Orthodox Church must be restructured to fit Oromuma. When people protested in mourning, wearing black garments in memory of those killed, the government cracked down ruthlessly. Black clothes became a symbol of defense. Civil servants were fired, teachers jailed, citizens assaulted for acts of silent grief. Ethiopia's pain was criminalized, and all the while, those close to the government grow richer. UAE, United Arab Emirates, and Gulf states, petrodollar investors are granted exclusive rights over vast agricultural lands and mining sites, displacing local communities. Addis Ababa is being branded into a sanitized playground for foreign elites. Real estate development is for Dubai. They call it Dubai on the Nile. Behind the skyscrapers and shiny infrastructure lies a shadow economy of human trafficking, land theft, and slave labor. Thousands of young women are trafficked to Gulf states, while Ethiopian hands dig the earth for others' profit. This is a grand orchestration of the Oromuma project. It is a mosaic of suffering, covered in propaganda. A dystopia wearing the mask of Renaissance, a regime not content with governing, but with rewriting identity, geography, and memory. It is not merely another cycle of ethnic tension. It is a systematic effort to dissolve Ethiopianism itself and replace it with a tribal empire built on the ashes of coexistence. The world may once again claim ignorance, as it did in Rwanda, but the signs are here: the speeches, the deaths, the silence. All that remains is the final spark. If left unchecked, Oromuma will not only devour Ethiopia, it will destabilize the entire East African region. These truths must be spoken. This record must remain. And Ethiopia must remember that it was never ants, it was always people. So in this section 2, Oromuma and the Kush Project, a supremacist dream, masquerading as federalism, has been discussed. So behind the veil of so-called ethnic federalism lies a radical expansionist vision, the Oromuma doctrine. This ideology aims to establish a Kushite empire led by a manufactured Oromo supremacy. Land grabs in Afar, Amhara Wollo, desecration of Amhara heritage sites, and sacred deals over Red Sea access with Eritrea and Djibouti form the operational map. What is promoted as national development is in reality a plan to re-engineer Ethiopia's demographic, religious, and cultural DNA violently and irreversibly. Section 3. Global silence. Echoes of Rwanda repeating. The international community, despite full visibility, remains disturbingly silent. Ethiopia is burning. State-led hate speech, systemic ethnic cleansing, and religious persecution mirror the stages of genocide witnessed in Rwanda. Yet not a single meaningful intervention has come. Why? Because geopolitical interests, minerals, Red Sea access take precedence over Black lives. This silence is complicity. This negligence is orchestration. Why this must be preserved? This testimony is not a report. It is a witness statement. It demands preservation for history, for the living, and for those yet to come. It's a moral appeal to every Ethiopian, every African, every human being who refuses to be fooled by diplomatic language while people perish in silence. So in this section 3, there is collusion, silence, and the echo of Rwanda. As the foundations of Ethiopia continues to tremble under the weight of political manipulation and state-sponsored injustice, one harrowing reality pierces through the fog of propaganda. Deafening silence of the international community. For many Ethiopians, this silence is not just indifference, it is complicity. The world, which claimed to stand for justice, human rights, and peace, has chosen to turn a blind eye, just as it did in Rwanda in 1994. Today, we see similar patterns. Genocide is no longer whispered, it is publicly advocated. Influential voices, professors, politicians, religious figures have called for the extermination of the Amhara people with chilling boldness. Hate speeches has become normalized. Ethnic cleansing is unfolding in broad light. From university lectures to televised panels, A dangerous narrative is being planted that one ethnic identity must prevail over the others, that one linguistic group, under the guise of Oromuma, must become the center of power, culture, and history. And yet, the international media says little. The United Nations offers no decisive resolution. Western powers, those who train, fund, and cooperate with Ethiopia's military and intelligence apparatus, pretend neutrality. Aid continues to flow into the country, even when the money and influence empower those responsible for displacement, starvation, and war crimes. Eritrean President Isaias Afwerki, in a rare moment of regional clarity, openly warned during Eritrea's Independence Day speech that the most dangerous threat that the most dangerous threat to East Africa is not the foreign enemy, but the internal ambition of Ethiopia's Oromuma agenda. He described it bluntly, naming it as a dangerous supremacist project. While his voice may have been dismissed by some in the West, many Ethiopians say his warning is eerily present. The desecration of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church is yet another front in this orchestrated attack. A man known as Abuna Saurus, aligned with Oromo ethno-nationalist ideology and empowered by the current regime, has been leading an internal rebellion within the church. Thousands of Orthodox Christians have been killed. People killed. Churches burned. Priests and deacons hunted and killed. And sacred books destroyed. In rural areas, historic holy sites are looted with impunity. This is not religious reform. It's a cultural purge. And yet what happens to the victims? Those who mourn the dead by wearing black were met not with sympathy, but persecution. Ordinary people, teachers, employees, citizens were arrested for expressing their grief. The Ethiopian government, instead of offering comfort and restitution, criminalized mourning. How can a state claim legitimacy when it punishes sorrow? More outrageously, the very man responsible for this chaos, Saurius, was later elevated by the government and granted a seat in the Holy Synod. The implications are devastating. This is not merely a theological dispute. It is a systemic dismantling of an ancient institution that has long stood as a bastion of Ethiopian identity. By infiltrating the church and repurposing it into a vehicle of state control, the regime aims to fracture the last remaining pillars of unity. The Prosperity Party's cynical manipulation of poverty and religion compounds this tragedy. While the population is pushed into economic despair, where even a single meal a day becomes a luxury, the government turns to prosperity gospel preachers to gaslight the masses. One such preacher, speaking before a crowd, openly mocked the poor by comparing them to black ants, saying they never let go once they latch onto you. This narrative is not accidental. It is part of a larger scheme to dehumanize Ethiopians, especially the vulnerable, while crafting a new elite who thrive off Gulf investments and exploitive land deals. Farmland is sold to the UAE, leaving local communities displaced. Women are trafficked to the Arab world under the guise of employment, while minerals, real estate, and ancestral lands are handed to foreign actors. It's a neo-colonial nightmare wrapped in modern development language. Doctors are now currently on strike. Teachers are abandoning their classrooms. Civil servants can no longer afford rent. The economy is collapsing, not due to misfortune, but by design. It is the economic arm of social engineering, using IMF-backed austerity measures to impoverish the population, break their resistance, and consolidate power. Yet the West is silent. One must ask, why? Is it because the regime claims to support anti-terror operations? Is it because of geopolitical alignments? Or is it because, as in Rwanda, the suffering of black people, when politically inconvenient, can be ignored? The people of Western Ethiopia face another layer of betrayal. South Sudanese rebel forces have moved into Ethiopian territory, repressing the national flag and renaming villages. Sudan proper on the north does the same thing. Citizens cry for help, but the government does nothing. It is as if the state too is complicit in the erasure of its own sovereignty. But why? Because when resistance mounts, the regime will exploit it, declaring a false flag war to gain support and distract from its internal failures. I'm warning you, South Sudanese invasion by Ethiopian current government is imminent, and you gave them the case. In the Somali region of Ethiopia, silence rings, historically vocal really. The rings, politicians are now strangely compliant. The government's promise that the Somali people will be allowed to dominate a future greater Somalia under Oromuma's umbrella. In return, they are told to be patient, to hold back from protest until the time is ripe. Meanwhile, Ethiopian flags are torn down across the south, churches burned in the north and south and everywhere, and women trafficked from the center. What future remains for a country being devoured from all sides, spiritually, economically, culturally, and territorially? This is no longer just politics. This is a slow motion annihilation of a nation. This is familiar. Rwanda's genocide was preceded by years of dehumanizing speech. Tutsis were called cockroaches. Today in Ethiopia, the metaphor is ants. The symbolism is identical, and so is the intent, to reduce a people to pest so that extermination can be justified. We must not let history repeat itself. We must document this, preserve it, and speak it, Let the record show that this was not done in secret, that Ethiopians screamed and cried and wrote and marched and died while the world pretended not to see. Let future generations know silence is complicity. Ethiopian Hearts for Peace calls upon global human rights organizations to investigate and speak up, religious leaders to stand for truth beyond tribal divisions, Ethiopian diaspora to recognize and amplify this message, media to break their silence and report on the unfolding ethnic persecutions. This is not politics. This is survival. This is truth. We will not let Ethiopia be erased. We will remember. We will resist. We will rebuild. If you have any questions or suggestions, please contact Ethiopian Hearts for Peace at ethiopianheartsforpeace@gmail.com. Preserve, share, and act. You see, when reporting the rape feels worse than the rape itself, a parallel to betrayal of the Ethiopian Church, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. One final word. In the world of trauma, there is a cruel pattern that victims of rape know too well. The aftermath can wound deeper than the violence itself. When a woman reports rape, she is first asked to relieve every detail for the police, then again for lawyers, and then again in court, and under scrutiny, under doubt, under cross-examination. Each time, her body is no longer touched, but her soul is stripped layer by layer. The justice system meant to protect becomes the second violator. The same horror echoes today within the walls of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. The Church, once the sanctum of hope, liturgy, and ancestral faith, has been invaded and desecrated. Holy sites burned, sculptures destroyed, worshippers murdered, clergy targeted. The spiritual rape of Ethiopia's soul has already happened. But what follows was worse. The very man who led the rebellion, who desecrated altars and spilled blood in sacred grounds, was not condemned. He was elevated, honored, seated at the very altar he defiled. The synod, under pressure or manipulation, accepted him into his highest council, as if nothing had happened, as if the saints had not wept, as if the martyrs had not screamed from the earth. And so the faithful who mourned in black were prosecuted, arrested for wearing mourning colors, accused of rebellion for remembering the dead. Just like the raped woman, the church was forced to recount its violation, only to be told it was not real, or worse, that the violator now speaks for God. This is not only spiritual trauma, it is a systematic desecration of justice, memory, and truth. And it mirrors a larger violence engulfing Ethiopia, a state that rewards perpetrators and punishes the mourners, a leadership that enshrines cruelty and brands resistance as sedition. The body of the church has been raped, and now the survivors are asked to kneel before the rapist and pray. We refuse. I refuse. We'll remember. I will remember. We will speak. Here I am, speaking to you. Thank you very much. This is Abeba Nagash. May 25, 25, year 25. Thank you.